Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Maharani Sahel, and I'm from class 33.48.02, and I'm here to do my poetry appreciation final project. Okay, so poem that contains the work setting. I choose Oxford by Kate Douglas. So it's summer season and it's on Oxford, UK. From the first line, at home as in no other city, here summer holds her breath in a dark street. The trees nocturnally scented, lovers like moths go by silently on the footpaths, and spirits of the young wait cannot be expelled, multiply each year. Number two, poetry that contains the other background. So I choose Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Fire and Ice was inspired by a passage in Canto 32 of Dante's Inferno, in which the worst offenders of hell, the traitors, are submerged up to their necks in ice while in a very hell, alike so bound with ice. It did not look like water, but like a glass, right clear. I saw where sinners are preserved in ice. In an anecdote he recounted in 1960 in a Science and the Arts presentation, the prominent astronomer Harlow Shapley claims to have inspired Fire and Ice. Shapley described an encounter he had with Frost a year before the poem was published, in which Frost, noting that Shapley was the astronomer of his day, asked him how the world will end. Shapley responded that either the sun will explode and incinerate the earth, or the earth will somehow escape this fate, only the end up slowly freezing in deep space. Shapley was surprised at seeing Fire and Ice in print a year later, and referred to it as an example of how science can influence the creation of art or clarify its meaning. Number three, poem that contains critical perspective. I choose Cage Bird by Maya Angelou. This cage bird is an extended metaphor for the Black community's part and ongoing experience of racism in the United States in particular, and can also be read as portraying the experience of any oppressed group. The metaphor captured the overwhelming agony and cruelty of the oppression of marginalized communities by relating it to the emotional suffering of the caged bird. The poem used the metaphor of the bird to capture not just the way that oppression imposes overt physical limitation on the oppressed, but also the way that those limitations emotionally and psychologically impact of the oppressed. For instance, in line 10 to 11, the poem states that the caged bird can seldom see through his bar, which seems at first as if the poem is going to explain how being in the cage limits the bird's line of sight, but instead the poem further describes the bars as being bars of rage. The bird is imprisoned, and certainly the physical bars of the cage limit its line of sight, but the bird can seldom see. because this condition make the bird blind with rage. By fusing the limit imposed by the cage with the emotional impact those limits inspire, the poem made clear that the environment and the anger can't be separated from one another. The oppression of the cage doesn't just keep the bird captive. The captivity chains the bird, and in so doing robs the birds of its very self. Number 4, poem analysis. Out by Robert Frost. So intrinsic elements, figurative language, personification. The saw, which is compared to a buzzing sound, is personified. The buzz saw snarl and rattle in the yard, and made dust and drop stove flying stick of wood. And onomatopoeia, the natural sound of animals or objects. The poet has used the word buzz, snarled, and rattled. And symbolism, the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving the symbolic meanings that are different from their literal meanings. Here, sunset symbolized the end of the young boy's life. Under the sunset, far into Fairmount. B. Imagery is used to make readers perceive things involving their five senses. The bus saw snarl and rattle in the yard, and made dust and dropped stop-length sticks of wood. The doctors put him in the dark of ether. C. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sound in the same line in quick succession, such as the sound of S in sweet scented stuff when the breeze drew across it. D. Assonance in the repetition of vowel sound in the same line. The sound of O in a made dust and a drop stop length stick of wood, and the sound of I in he lay and puffed his lips out with his breath. E. Theme. Death, child labor, and fragility of life. The poem narrates the tragic death of a boy who accidentally severed his hand while working on the farm. The young boy later dies in shock. And outset, the speaker presents a graphic description of a dangerous saw, which was the main cause of the death. The ending of the poem is close, shocking, and cruel. People behave indifferently to the death of that boy. There are no signs of mourning or sadness on their faces. They return to their work as if nothing has happened. Structure. The poem contains 34 lines. Extrinsic elements. Work setting. The set is in indically rural landscape between the state of New Hampshire and Vermont. In the distance are mountains. Outer backgrounds. This is a true story of a boy named Raymond Tracy Fitzgerald. His hand was badly injured by that vicious saw blade. The boy lost a lot of blood. He was brought into the house and the doctor was immediately called, but he couldn't make it. He died very suddenly from shocks. Number 5. A simile. Now I understand why don't we unite? Because our goals are different, like east and west. B. Metaphor. Children are seeds of treasure of this world, because child is the future of the world. See personification. Smile like the sun in the morning. Your eyes are like the moon at night, and sounds like a melody that never goes wrong. Are you even human? D. Hyperbole. Your punch is like steel, speed. Your punch is like steel. Speed is like the wind. You're like a world-class boxer who beats all your opponents. E. Metonymy. Times are getting more sophisticated. People are getting smarter. Why do people prefer to use Android instead of using books? And that's all. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.